Provost, I don't think we can see Councillor Michael. Michael McCormick is in now. I think that's everybody, Provost.
Is Councillor McCabe here?
Yes, he's here.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think we can begin the meeting now. Welcome to this meeting of Inverclyde Council on the 24th of September 2020. Just a couple of things that I think we should bear in mind before we begin the begin. If, first of all, you know, the more perceptive councillors may see that I am not, in fact, Selina Cook, although I have her nameplate below me. You know, please treat me only as Martin Brennan. If you want to speak, type question or comment. Please don't wave a variety of fingers or put a thumbs up sign, because that just confuses the issue. Please don't do that. You type question or comment in your chat box, everyone in your drop down menu, and I will call on you to speak. I will told that you are about to speak. If there are members who are accessing the meeting by telephone, now that's two at the present moment that I know of. That's Councillor Clougherty, that's Jim, and also Councillor MacLeod, Jim also. They don't have a chat box function, so at each item, somewhere in each item, I will ask them to speak. I will ask them if they need to speak or if they wish to ask a question. Please have your own microphone on mute unless you are called upon to speak. Now, I think we can begin the meeting properly. Sharon, are there any apologies?
The Provost, no, we've got a full house of members today, so no apologies. Are there any declarations of interest?
No.
I think there's a bit of interference from somewhere, but I'm not sure where it is. I don't think it was somebody speaking, so I don't think there is anything. We'll just
okay. Thank you, thanks, Sharon. Now we'll proceed to the minutes, and I must caution you that there's something of a backlog in the minutes, so this is going to take a little longer than usual. And one or two councillors are going to feature more heavily than normally. So be kind to them. Okay. The Inverclyde Council, 20th of February 2020. I declare this is a true record. Page 43. Page 44, page 45, 46, 47, and page 48. The Audit Committee, 25th of February 2020.
Provost, I declare that this is a true and accurate minute of the meeting.
Thank you, Chano. Page 49. And page 50. The Health and Social Care Committee, 27th of February 2020.
Provost, that makes a true accurate record of the meeting.
Page 51, page 52, page 53, page 54, and page 55. Planning Board, 4th of March 2020. David.
Declare this a true minute, Provost.
Page 56, page 57, page 58, page 59, page 60, page 61 and 62. The local review body, 4th of March 2020. David.
I declare this a true minute, Provost.
Page 63 and page 64. Environment and Regeneration Committee, 5th of March 2020. Michael.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Page 65, page 66, page 67, page 68, page 69, page 70, and page 71. The Education and Communities Committee, 10th of March 2020.
Declare this as a true minute, Provost.
Page 72, page 73, page 74, 75, page 76, 77, and page 78. General Purposes Board, 11th of March 2020. Sarah?
I declare this as a true minute, Provost.
Page 79. The Inverclyde Council, 12th of March 2020. I declare this as a true record. Page 80 and page 81. The Petitions Committee, 19th of March 2020. Graham.
I declare this a true record, Provost.
Page 82. Policy and Resources Committee, 24th of March 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 83, page 84, 85, 86, and page 87. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 7th of April 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Pages 88 and 89. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 21st of April 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 90, page 91, page 92, and page 93. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 5th of May 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 94, 95, 96, and 97. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 19th of May 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Pages 98, 99, and 100. Policy and Resources Executive Committee, 2nd of June 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 101, 102, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 16th of June 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 108, 109, 110, and 111. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 30th of June 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Pages 112, 113, and 114. Policy and Resources Executive Subcommittee, 28th of July 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 115, 116, and 117. Policy and Resources Committee, 11th of August 2020. Stephen.
I move the minute as a true record, Provost.
Page 118, 119, 120, and 121. Health and Social Care Committee, 20th of August 2020. Robert.
I move it's a true record, Provost.
Page 122, 123 and 124. Environment and Regeneration Committee, 27th of August 2020. Michael.
I move the minutes as a true record, Provost.
Page 125, 126, 127, 128 and 129. Education and Communities Committee, 1st of September 2020. Jim.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Pages 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, 136 and 137. Planning Board, 2nd of September 2020. David.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Pages 138, 139, 140, 141 and 142 and 143.
That's the local review body, Provost. 141 is the local review body.
I jumped the gun, right? It's David, local review body, 2nd of September.
It is a true record, Provost.
Right. 141, 142 and 143. General Purposes Board, 9th of September 2020. Gerard.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Page 144. The Inverclyde Council, 10th of September 2020. I move this as a true record. Page 145. Those are the minutes of the committees, subcommittees and boards of Inverclyde Council. Gerard.
Excuse me, Provost. It's pages 146 for those additional meetings that have taken place since the compilation of the volume.
Of course.
Page 146, please.
Page 146, it is the Policy and Resources Committee. Stephen.
I move the minutes of true record, Provost.
Page 146, page 147, 148, 149, 150, 151 and 152. So I was a bit premature the last time, so I now believe that we have completed the minutes of
Provost.
Sorry, right, Gerard.
Please excuse the prematurity of my interruption, Provost. It's the local police and fire scrutiny. That took place only there on the 17th of September. It's page 153 onwards, please, Provost.
Page local police and fire scrutiny.
Or page 153 for Councillor McVeigh, please, Provost.
I move this as a true record, Provost.
Pages 153. Now you guide me here, Gerard.
It's
Page
pages 154 and 155, please.
155.
That's it, Provost. Thank you.
And we're completed, right? Okay. We had a few false starts or a few false endings there, but I think we can now transfer our attention to the various items on the agenda. And as far as I can see, please tell me if I'm speaking untruth. We have agenda item 3, and this is notice of a motion by Councillor Curley. Christopher, if you would like to speak to this.
Thank you, Provost. This motion is to resolve in principle that the default speed limit for housing areas in Inverclyde should become 20 miles per hour rather than 30 miles per hour, and to remit to officers to bring a report on how this should be implemented. The primary driver for this proposal is improving road safety. As we all know, speed kills. A reduction in speed from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour seems a small change, but what is its effect? Firstly, an impact at 30 miles per hour has more than twice the energy of an impact at 20 miles per hour. Secondly, and utilising the stopping distances from the highway code, a car at 20 miles per hour will stop 11 metres or 36 feet before a car travelling at 30 miles per hour. That is more than 2 car lengths. In addition, at the point that the 20-mile car has come to rest, the 30-mile per hour car will still be going at 27 miles per hour. Reducing traffic speed is therefore the key to improving both the ability of drivers to avoid collisions with pedestrians and reduce the injuries sustained by pedestrians when they do occur. I think we all know a number of people who have been hit by cars. As a young child, I ran out between 2 cars, and when you look at the number of cars parked on the sides of our roads within our housing areas, this is an incident that is all too familiar. Luckily for me, the car was travelling slower than the 30 mile per hour speed limit, so despite rolling over the top of the car and landing on the road behind, I was able to walk away. Again, I think we all know people who are not so lucky. In bringing this motion to Council, we of course do not see this as a panacea for traffic safety, as other measures will always be required in certain situations to complement a reduction in speed limit. But it is an important step in reframing the issue, where rather than requiring to justify a 20 mile per hour speed limit, it is the higher 30 mile an hour speed limit that requires to be justified. I think it's important to highlight that this motion is not prescriptive about how we proceed, timeframes, and what roads will have a 20 mile per hour limit. I am sure in considering this motion before the meeting today, we have all had our ideas about what we mean for our wards. Rather, these are matters that will be developed if the motion is passed by Council, with the ability for 20 mile an hour zones currently being considered by officers to be incorporated within this overarching strategy. Public consultation will of course be key. Earlier I stated that the driver for this is road safety, but there will be other benefits. For example, lower traffic speeds should encourage more walking and cycling. Such participation in active travel will produce in turn environmental and health benefits. My fellow councillor Jim MacLeod will discuss that further. I therefore would ask everybody here to support this motion.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Jim, Councillor MacLeod, do you wish to speak? Do you wish to second the motion?
Yes, please. Provost, can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can.
Yes, Provost, fellow members. As members will be aware of, campaigned for 20 mile an hour speed limits for many years for our housing estates throughout Inverclyde. Many of our housing estates were built in the 1940s, 50s and 60s, at a time there were fewer cars on our roads. Many housing estates weren't built to cope with the volume of traffic and parked cars we now have, where often we can have 2 and 3 car households. On many of the roads in our housing schemes, it's not safe to drive any faster than 20 mile an hour. I believe we already have a number of 20 mile an hour roads and streets, but many are only advisory. We need more of these roads to be made safer, ensure all our community are made safe, to reduce speed limits and ensure they're mandatory. The COVID-19 pandemic has seen many more people walk and cycle, particularly during times when there were travel restrictions. We've seen bicycle sales soar by 400%. Over this time, how many more photographs have we all seen of local scenery, landscape and of nature on social media? We've seen so many people notice their own environments and the place they live more. Surely we'd all want to see more of this continue. To see children and adults walk and cycle more to school, play, work, study or for recreational purposes. We can help do this by making our roads and streets safer, by reducing speed limits in our housing schemes. How good would it be to encourage less car usage, to reduce the carbon footprint, to cut pollution levels, to cut traffic congestion, to alleviate parking problems? About 20% of car usage is less than 1 mile. That's about 5 minutes cycling time. About 38% of car journeys are less than 2 miles, can be cycled in about 10 minutes. And 66% of car journeys are under 5 miles, can be cycled in about 25 minutes. We want people to get fitter and healthier, reduce obesity levels, reduce ill health, diabetes and disability. We need to make our roads and streets safer for everyone, but especially for children, older people and disabled people. This also fits into Council's active travel strategy. And like Chris, many of you will know, I was hit by a car as well as a child, and I don't want to see that happen to anybody else. So I would urge members, please support the motion that will reduce housing estate speed limits to 20 miles per hour, which will help go a long way to make our roads and streets safer for everyone in Inverclyde. Thank you.
Thank you, both Christopher and Jim. Now, there are a number, I'm going to call on a number of people to speak, and they are in the sequence that they entered the chat facility. And the first is Robert Moran. Robert. Robert. Unmute. You're on mute.
Sorry about that, Provost. I broadly support this, the principle of this motion, Provost, but I would like to see a fuller report because we're talking about built-up areas. Where I live here, just up the road at the Well Park, is a street called Regent Street, and there's houses both sides of that road, Provost. And if you go down to Inverclyde Street, same scenario. Now, whether you like or not, these are main thoroughfares for people coming from Port Glasgow to go to Inverclyde and Winsbane and places like that. So I would imagine that if you're going to everywhere the same, you'd have to give the same thought to people who are travelling through Inverclyde, through Greenock to get to the southwest. And certainly where I live, there did be a fatality here. As a person who cycles, I've already been up in the accident emergency myself. Had an accident on my bike. It's so much so that my cycling done in the house now. I've got an exercise bike and it's far safer. But I broadly support the principle, but I think there needs to be an awful lot more work done before we can come to any conclusion or decision on it, Provost.
Thanks very much, Robert. Natasha, Councillor Murphy, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Provost. I'm the exact same as Robert. I do support this in principle. However, I do think that the need for this will be different in different areas, and we don't want to see anybody being harmed through any user of the road. And I think we do need more information on this. So rather than today committing to putting 20 mile per hour speed limits as a blanket across the area, I think we do need this report first. So I'm not saying no to what Councillor Curley and Councillor MacLeod is proposing, because I do think that their motives are pure and that they have got the benefit of the wider public at the centre of this. But I do think that we need to have more information, because I think that right now I can't make a properly informed decision on this that isn't just based purely off of my own knowledge. Hope that makes sense. Thanks, Provost.
No, thank you. No, it does. Stephen, would you like to speak on this?
I think Councillor Mackenzie's before me, Provost.
Oh, you're right. You're right. You should be here. Sorry, Drew, and great apologies there due to you, Drew, because I let Stephen in front of you, and he was good enough to indicate what a faux pas I'd made of it. Okay.
Thank you, Provost. I think we're all agreed that road safety should be a priority of this council, and we all have a responsibility to ensure that our roads and streets can be safely used by motorists, cyclists, pedestrians alike. We can all agree and accept that a reduction in speed does naturally reduce the number of accidents, and we can all agree that an accident at 20 mile will always tend to be less severe than one at 30 miles an hour. We're asking here that officers bring back a report looking at options for implementing a 20 miles an hour speed limit as a default in Inverclyde. And that in itself is quite a radical step. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the local authorities already have a power to implement 20 mile an hour speed limits at zones presently. And you'll find them commonly around schools, and they could be introduced to accident black spots and also potential accident black spots. And there are many streets in Inverclyde that they determine, the actual street itself determines the speed that motorists travel at. And there's some streets in Inverclyde you couldn't drive along at 30 mile an hour. And I think we all know what these are. Some people might think that a 20 mile an hour speed limit introduction would not be a popular decision. And I think a lot of people would think it would be an unnecessary decision. The change itself, it would need to be a community-led change. It would need to be a popular change and a gradual change implemented by popular opinion. I'm interested in hearing more on the proposal. The proposal is quite vague. It's quite vague as in it's talking about housing estates, but it doesn't mention sort of built-up areas. Does that include the likes of the West End at Greenock, where 30 miles an hour is quite easy through these wide streets? I'm not sure that there is a lot of merit in making a default position. I'm not opposed to going to the next level, but I would also think that introduce a speed limit at 20 mile an hour, and the honest driver will reduce his speed to 20 mile an hour, but the ones that are driving at 40 at the moment will continue to drive at 40. I'm not opposed to taking this to the next level for further discussion, but I think as a default position, I would have strong reservations that I ever came to that. Thanks, Provost.
So amongst other things, Drew raised the issue of enforcement. Stephen? Councillor McCabe.
Yeah, I was just unmuting myself there, Provost. Thanks, Provost. I mean, as a couple of my colleagues have indicated, the administration is supportive of the aims of the motion, which is obviously to reduce the likelihood of accidents on our roads and the severity of injuries caused by these accidents, and indeed to encourage active travel. And we know that recently we've had a briefing on active travel committed somewhere between around £1 million for active travel initiatives. I'm getting some interference, Provost. Okay. I think that's the interference ended. So we certainly believe that the expansion of 20 mile an hour zones could make an important contribution to achieving the aims set out in the motion. And indeed, in our 2017 election manifesto, we actually made the following commitment to expanding the number of mandatory 20 mile an hour traffic zones in our housing estates and other built-up areas to enhance the safety of pedestrians and motorists. And as some of you will recall, as part of the 2018-19 budget considerations, we actually put forward a bid for funding to start implementing more 20 mile an hour zones. And officers at that time had recommended an allocation of £100,000, which was to commence the programme in advance of the outcome of a private member's bill, which was going through the Parliament at the time by Green MSP Mark Ruskell. And that bill's intention was to actually reduce the standard national speed limit in residential areas from 30 mile an hour to 20 mile an hour. Unfortunately, our bid for funding did not meet with enthusiastic support from the other political groups in the council, and obviously as part of the annual budget process we have to compromise, so our proposals never made it into the final budget package that was agreed by the council. And likewise, Mr Ruskell's private members bill was actually voted down in the Rural Economy Committee by SNP, Conservative and Lib Dem MSPs, so that never saw the light of day. I think it's important to recognise, Provost, that locally we actually have 8 mandatory 20 mile an hour zones, I'm advised, 5 are in the vicinity of schools, 3 are in residential areas, including one in the Broadfield area of the Mullen ward, and 1 is in Gourock Town Centre. And as we've recently been advised, officers are actually currently working on temporary TROs for 20-mile-an-hour zones within the town centres as part of the Spaces for People initiative. And the next phase after that will be to assess which schools would benefit from the introduction of 20-mile-an-hour zones. So it's not as if we haven't been doing anything around 20-mile-an-hour zones. So we certainly would be supportive of the request to bring forward a report to the appropriate committee, which would obviously be Environment Regeneration, outlining the options for implementing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits. And the experts tell me that there's more than one option, and in Edinburgh they've taken a particular approach rather than sort of individual 20-mile-an-hour zones in each of the sort of housing estates. They've got wider 20-mile-an-hour zones. So I think Edinburgh's certainly an area, and there's some other council areas that we could learn from good practice. But I think, as others have alluded to, it is possibly a bit premature to commit to the principle of 20 mile an hour being the default limit within all housing areas, because we really need to fully understand the implications of agreeing that policy. And as again has been alluded to, we'd want to consult on such a proposal, certainly including with Police Scotland, who would have the enforcement role. So, as I said, we're certainly supportive of the spirit of the motion. We're absolutely supportive of bringing forward a detailed report. But at this point in time, we think it might be a bit too far to commit at this point to the principle until we've went through the consultation and we've understand the full implications.
Thank you, Stephen. That's a very clear review of the administration's position on this issue. Councillor McElhaney, Jim, you wish to speak?
Thanks, Provost. I've had to come out of WebEx and try to come in via my phone due to continuing connection problems, which we'll discuss later on in the agenda. I struggle sometimes with words when whether it's semantics or whatever, but for someone to say resolves in principle or agrees in spirit of the motion, to me that's pretty much the same thing. So in effect, the motion is asking resolves in principle or agrees in spirit, if I want a different saying, but other words which I've said. But the motion is calling for the officers to bring back a report. So I think everybody is saying the same thing, with all due respect.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Thank you, Jim. Graham, you have a question. Graham, Councillor Brooks, you're mute.
Thanks very much. My question is actually to officers. I'm just wondering whether there is a legal definition of within household areas, because that's what the motion's calling for. And if this was to go through, understand that further reports would come back, but would this motion tie the hands of officers, and would they challenge the officers to look at 20-mile zones in major thoroughfares? Has already been suggested by other councillors. There is main thoroughfares through Inverclyde that have houses on it. So I'm just wondering whether the wording of this motion would potentially cause officers a challenge.
There don't appear to be many further questions, Christopher. I'm just saying that members have raised questions over how widespread or comprehensive this motion would be, and how it would be enforced, and how would the general public react to it. Don't think, as far as I can see, there are no amendments to the motion.
Provost, if I could please.
Yes, certainly.
Provost, I'll stand down. I think other members are trying to speak to you. I'll just stand down for the moment.
Provost, I've been trying to say a comment, and I've tried it 3 times and nothing's come up. It's regarding the 20-mile-an-hour limit. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Many years ago, I try that, and they tell me, and this is the police officers, that at 30 mile an hour, even though you can do that, you can actually be done for doing 5 miles an hour because the road surface isn't suitable. And this was going to happen, and at that time it was Braeside Road, various places. Now, the one thing I certainly am in favour of here is how can we save people from being knocked down? And it's not just children, sometimes it's older people. And a 20 mile an hour certainly would help. But I think you're right. We've all got to look at it, see how we can get this through, how to get it to work, and make sure. Another thing we've got to look at is teaching the children of safer ways of crossing the street. You'll always get them to run out behind an ice cream motor or something, and that happens, and you try to cut that down. But seriously, we've got to look at something to stop it happening and stop the way we're going. There are a lot more cars on the road now. They're certainly a lot faster than they used to be. And it does worry me what happened. But I think we'd have to go through all the plan to see what areas we're talking about, how we can get it, and how we can get this down. And I think we should be looking at is MD caught doing speeds above that should be well and truly dealt with by the police, not just with a small fine. Maybe take the licence off them for 3 or 4 months. These things might help them to get educated. And I know some insurance companies are putting little boxes on, and it bumps their insurance up if they go above a certain speed. Maybe we could talk to them and see if we can get that as well. Fitted to all part of your insurance, your car. Would that help? I don't know, but it's something worth trying.
Right.
Thanks.
Well, you're proposing more punitive measures for offenders.
Yes, and also to make sure that they put these little boxes on that makes sure it tells your speed when you're in this sort of 30 mile limits, and they get their insurance bumps up for that. They're doing that with a lot of people under a certain age.
Thank you, Channel. Stephen.
Yeah, I knew you were coming to the point where potentially you're going to invite Councillor Cully back in, but I don't think there's a need for us to divide in this matter. I mean, I think we're all agreed that we should have a report from officers looking at sort of the options for implementing 20 mile an hour speed limits. Some of us obviously think at this point in time it would be premature to commit in principle to 20 mile an hour being the default speed limit in housing areas. So, I mean, I would certainly ask the movers of the motion to accept that there is support for asking for a report from officers, and rather than divide, and that would be the sort of agreed position of the council.
Provost, may I speak?
Yes, certainly, Gerard.
Provost, excuse me for any interruption there. Obviously, Councillor Curley does have the opportunity to sum up. Councillor McCabe has already referred to that. And Provost, just for members' guidance in general, if the wording resolves in principle that 20 mile per hour speed limit should be the default speed limit within housing areas of Inverclyde, we are to be omitted by Councillor Curley and Councillor MacLeod's motion. That would then cover the instance of the lack of a need to vote. Accordingly, the Council remits officers to bring forward a report to the appropriate committee outlining the options for implementing such 20 mile per hour speed limits in Inverclyde. That would be the deletion which Councillor McCabe, I think, has offered to Councillor Curley to delete those words resolves in principle, etc. Thank you, Provost.
Okay. Are you happy with that, Stephen?
Yeah, I think that's a sensible suggestion. It's obviously up to the mover of the motion to consider that. And as I say, I hope we wouldn't divide, but if we were going to end up dividing, then that would certainly be an amendment.
Okay.
In which case,
Christopher, sorry, Gerard, on you go.
Again, forgive me, Provost. Again, that would then be for Councillor Curley to decide now whether or not he would accept such a matter, and then to consider whether he should sum up. Thank you, Provost.
It's over to you, Christopher, obviously.
Thank you, Provost. Obviously, I'm not summing up here at the moment, but I just want to say I think support for the council going forward on this, because I think making that sort of statement is a lot better than having a division and having a vote on it, especially if that vote turns out to be close. I do think we need to make a statement about the 20 mile per hour being the end game here. I don't want to have a situation where we're getting a report and the report is looking at is really just talking about speed limits in general. I think we look to say that the report really has to be on 20 mile per hour, and the view of the council is that we should be moving towards 20 mile per hour as speed limits. Stephen McCabe mentioned the fact that there's a number of 20 mile per hour speed limits in housing areas in Inverclyde. The issue is that this is not widespread, and some people feel that they're what they call it, don't have the benefit of that statutory protection in their housing areas. He mentions particularly that Broadfield, yes, that's a good example. But Broadfield could be replicated in lots of areas in Inverclyde. There's nothing really special about the housing provision in Broadfield and the risks in Broadfield in particular. So I think we should be trying to move towards making a statement. If there's a way we can come up with a reason for the keeping our idea of the principle or moving towards 20 mile or increasing the what they call it, the numbers of 20 miles per hour speed limits in what they call it in Inverclyde, I'm happy to sort of see that. But I think we do need to find the direction here. Rather than just looking at what is the implications of 20 mile per hour speed limits. I think we need to make a bit more of a case for saying this is where we want to go and how do we get there. And I'd like that to be contained within the motion. I think that's what the motion does at the moment. If there's another form of words that somebody wants to do, bring forward, I'd be pleased to hear it.
Christopher, so you're saying that you might find another form of words acceptable?
Provost, could I suggest those form of words just now, please, Provost, before Councillor Curley moves on and needs to sum up? The wording, if it were acceptable to all parties, could be along these lines, Provost. In terms of the motion, when it reads accordingly, so after Inverclyde Council notes that 1 and 2 as written, accordingly the Council remits officers to bring forward a report to the appropriate committee outlining the options for implementing 20-mile speed limits in Inverclyde and determining whether the principle of 20-mile per hour zones be the default speed limit within Inverclyde for housing areas.
Is that acceptable to you, Christopher?
I would be content with that wording, Provost.
Thank you, Provost.
Okay. Thank you very much. I haven't yet invited Tommy, Councillor McVeigh, to speak. Could you wish to speak now, Tommy?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I was just going to offer an alternative wording, but if Councillor Curley's happy with what Mr. Malone's actually proposed, then I'll withdraw that.
Right, okay. So I wondered, Gerard, I know you've done this once or twice, but could you rehearse the recommendation?
Of course, Provost, thank you. The whole recommendation would be contained in paragraph 1.2 of page 1 of your main papers. Inverclyde Council notes that, and I won't read, but it's item 1, reduction in traffic, and then 2, the traffic speed acts as an inhibitor, so that's exactly as it is. Then I go into the paragraph. Accordingly, the Council remits it to officers to bring forward a report to the appropriate committee, that would be the Environment Committee, outlining the options for implementing 20-mile per hour speed limits in Inverclyde and determining whether the principle of 20-mile per hour zones be the default speed limit within housing areas of Inverclyde.
You're happy with that, Christopher? Yes. Yes. Are we agreed?
That's agreed, Provost.
Agreed.
Motion carried with that amendment. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. Thanks, Gerard. Item number 4 is the SNP group proposed changes to committee membership, outside body representation and member champion. Councillor Robertson, as you know, became SNP group leader on the 5th of August this year. Under normal circumstances, this would be the signal for spontaneous applause and wild cheering, and quite possibly one or two discreet tears shed for Christopher's resignation. But we can't do that remotely, and we're not going to try. So it follows as Elizabeth's group is the largest non-administration political party. She is now leader of the minority groups. COSL has been informed of the changes in representation, and there have to be a number of changes which we're going to discuss today to membership of outside bodies and also champions, at least one community champion. Gerard, would you like to expand on that?
Provost, I would only add briefly to what you have said, Provost, exactly as you've said. In terms of the committees, political balance is maintained by the proposals put forward by the SNP group, and it is convention to support that because political balance is maintained. For the outside bodies you've mentioned, there is a vacancy for the Fair Trade Steering Group. There is a vacancy for the Women's Forum. For the Members' Champion, there is a proposal that Councillor Curley be nominated, but that is not a political balance, that is a council decision. And exactly as you said in our terms, Councillor Robertson is the group leader as from August and is the leader of the largest non-administration political party and is thus, in the council's terminology, leader of the minority groups from that date. There are therefore vacancies to fill, Provost, and a decision to be made in terms of the Healthy Lifestyles Champion. Thank you.
Before we proceed to that, Gerard, there are one or two members who wish to speak. David.
Thank you very much, Provost. What I'm about to say, Councillor Robertson, is not personal. We had a very good relationship with Councillor McElhenney, and we are having a good relationship with your good self. We really appreciate your position as leader of the largest group. That brings with that COSLA, we're happy about that. You do the appraisal of the chief executive, etc., etc. We're very happy with those roles. Where we are unhappy is the role of being leader of the minority groups, and that's really not acceptable to myself and my party. And I would like to hear other people what they think, but certainly I'm told by my young colleague that in 2017 I raised an objection to it. Subsequently, there was no change, and particularly think about the time that the Lord Lieutenant had his farewell lunch, when myself and also Councillor Halfeld as Deputy Provost never heard anything about it. And with all due respect, Councillor Crowther, you know I'm a great admirer of the job you do as a councillor. You're an excellent councillor. We discovered on the day that Councillor Crowther, substituting for Councillor McElhenney, was representing us at this lunch for the Provost. So we believe, for the Lord Lieutenant. So we believe that this position cannot continue and is unsustainable. Thank you very much.
David, it's a moot point, this, but I think they'll ask Mr. Malone to expatiate on it.
Thank you, Provost. There is an existing post in the council structure in terms of leader of the minority groups. It has been long-standing. By no means is it suggested or has been suggested or implied in any way that there is political alignment or leadership. It is, as the report says, that the leader of the largest non-administration political party is the leader of the minority groups, and that has been our council's position. There's a position to be filled. If the terminology requires to be changed, and I would actually just reflect upon some fundamentals in this regard. There is no need for this council or any council to nominate or to reflect the responsibility for any opposition member in terms of their duties. I have to say that as an officer, I commend this council for establishing such a role with such a reflection of the duties that would be led in opposition. We do not like as a council to refer to opposition. We try to work in consensus. Therefore, we don't have a leader of the opposition. We do have a leader of the minority groups that reflects that there is not necessarily alignment within the minority groups. In fact, these days, very much split from what perhaps might have existed in the 50s, 60s and 70s. There is very much a consensual approach and very much a spread of parties that are far beyond the mainstream main political parties. I make no reference to any political issues whatsoever. We have also, of course, a significant contribution from the independent councillors who are independent and who are not an independent party. They are an independent coalition of independent councillors. Thus, I say that the time to resolve this would be certainly at the next administration of the council in 2022, because it is a terminology, and the terminology could be changed to leader of the largest non-administration party. It would be possible to do that subsequently within the term of this council by means of a separate report if the council wished to do that. I would, however, commend the council to continue the practice that has been established for a lengthy period of time and to reflect the importance of supporting an opposition leader, not necessarily that opposition leader leading the minority parties, and that's never the intention of the wording. But if the wording's causing trouble, we've got to look at it and to see what we can do to satisfy our councillors. No doubts about that.
So, as far as I understand, David, you had an issue with the wording, but the wording can be subsequently changed.
We have an issue with the role. It cannot be the leader of the minority parties. I'm interested to hear what the independents think, and also Councillor Rebecca. But certainly, I don't think it's appropriate. Quite happy that Elizabeth is the leader of the largest opposition group, or the largest opposition party. Quite happy in that role, happy with the things that comes with it. We've no desire to do the things that she does, because the SNP are the second largest party in the council, and that brings certain things with it. But we don't, I think even just beyond the wording, we don't like the wording and we don't like the role.
Thank you very much, David. You've explained yourself very, very clearly. The next person who wishes to speak is Councillor McCabe. Stephen.
I wasn't really going to come in on this particular point because I'm a former leader of the minority groups in different times. So if there are other members that want to come in on this point, I'd rather wait till this issue is resolved and then come in. But I mean, it seems to me there is an issue clearly here on the part of more than one of the minority groups. So therefore, there has to be some sort of discussion around this, and obviously we can consider that. But I was wanting to come in on other points.
Provost, can I come in also, please? Provost, in order to advise the council on this point, in terms of the leader of the minority groups, or any such terminology as would satisfy councillors, could I please ask this? This is not an item for council decision this afternoon. In terms of the report that is before you as an item of business, we are noting, and we do not require to note, it is not the council's necessary authority or function to note, but we are noting, given the changes that are proposed, the actual factual accuracy of what the SNP group has done. If there is a business item to discuss this, I will advise members, particularly Councillor Wilson, as the member raising this just now, as to how to do that as a proper business item for the council, and it will certainly have officer attention. But may I please make this point, in whatever way the debate goes, This is not an item of business for today. It is a noting, and the noting is it is not a mandatory noting. It's a noting because the report is here. It need not be here. And if there is an item of business to change the heading or the term of that post, the name of that post, that's a separate item of business, Provost, and I must bring that to your attention, please. It's a separate debate from what's there in the papers today.
Okay, thank you very much, Jared. That certainly sets out the rules of engagement. Ronnie, I believe you wanted to speak.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I think my comment explains everything. I mean, Jerry has mentioned the fact that that the wording is basically a problem, and he's correct. I mean, the wording is very straightforward. It said that the appointed SNP group leader is the leader of the minority groups from that date, and that is definitely not accurate. And I really don't understand why we can't name Elizabeth as leader of the opposition. I mean, that's exactly what she is, the leader of the main opposition party. It's very simple, and I don't really see why the wording can't be changed at the first opportunity. What is the problem with that? Thanks, Provost.
Thank you, Jared. Lynn, Councillor Quinn, you have a comment, Lynn.
Yeah, thanks for that. So the first thing I want to say is congratulations, Liz. Just finding it all a wee bit weird that we're actually talking about Liz and she's kind of, I was going to say sitting there, but virtually there. So I'd be really interested to hear from Liz since we're actually talking about her, and it just feels a bit weird to me. I'm sure she'll have a lot to say. I'm sure she probably doesn't want to be leader of us lot anyway. So because who would really? So I mean, I don't have an issue with the role and the position. I think Liz is going to be a really good leader, but it's just really for us as independents, we have a problem with the word leader in general, because that's mentioned quite a lot through sort of council processes about leaders, and some of the structures are designed around group. We're not group, so I just have a problem with the word leader in general, but it's not about this position or anything. I think we've agreed that we need to look at the wording. With a better definition, you know, leader of a minority group might be more beneficial, but I think obviously Liz should be heavily involved in that discussion.
Okay, Lynn, thank you. Stephen?
Yeah, I'm presuming we've resolved this issue and there's going to be offline discussions and potentially some sort of proposal or motion come to the council. So all I was going to say, and again, congratulations to Elizabeth and indeed Chris as the deputy leader. I think I did pay tribute to them at the Policy and Resources Committee. And again, thanks to Chris McElhenney for his contribution as the leader of the minority groups, which may or may not change as a title. But what I was going to say on behalf of the administration, we're happy to support the proposed changes put forward by the SNP group, including the appointment of Councillor Curley as the healthy lifestyle champion. He appears to certainly love a very healthy life, so we think he would be an excellent role model for the position. Clearly, there are vacancies in terms of Fair Trade Steering Group and the Women's Forum. The Labour administration is appropriately represented in both, so obviously if the SNP are not going to nominate for those positions, then it's up to the other opposition groups to potentially nominate for those positions.
Okay. And with your guidance, Jared, I think we've resolved the first part of the issue, but we have to fill a number of vacancies. The SNP vacancies themselves are one-for-one swaps, and I don't think they will cause a problem at all. I may be wrong, but I very much doubt it. But the council has been asked to fill the vacancies on the Fair Trade Steering Group. Could we do that?
Yes, indeed, Provost, and Provost again to assist. I'm noting that there is a proposal for Councillor Curley to be the Healthy Lifestyles Champion. I don't note any counter proposal to that, any amendment to that. So there will be two resultant vacancies, the Fair Trade Steering Group, as you've just said, Provost, and the Women's Forum. Any nominations, Provost? Should I perhaps call for that? Any nominations for the Fair Trade Steering Group, firstly?
I'll nominate Councillor Brooks for the Fair Trade Steering Group.
Is that seconded?
I'm sure Councillor will be desperate to second it.
I beg your pardon. Who has seconded it, please?
I'll second it.
Provost Brennan has seconded
Yes.
it. And Councillor Brooks, do you accept that nomination thus far? Yes. Are there any amendments? Are there any other proposals for the Fair Trade Steering Group? Provost, there are no other proposals. Councillor Brooks is appointed unanimously. Provost, will I call for the Women's Forum nominations?
Please do.
Thank you,
Please
Provost.
do.
Nominations for the Women's Forum, please, members. Provost, I'm not receiving any nominations. Is that place to remain temporarily unfilled?
There'll be a vacancy there. Is everyone happy with that? No nominations at all. The women's group.
Provost, I will retain that. I will retain that on the list with potential vacancies for any future reports coming forward. Provost, I'm noting that Councillor Curley has been appointed unanimously to the Healthy Lifestyles Champion. And that concludes the business for that item number 4, Provost.
Provost, can I get a Provost, Councillor Jim McElhaney here. Can I get a comment in on 1.2, please? I was waiting on you coming round to those that are on telephone.
I've been most remiss, Jim, and I didn't ask you, and I didn't ask Jim McLeod, so I'll do that now. And thanks for drawing that to my attention. Okay, Jim.
Regarding 1.2, leader of the minority groups, I think it's important to point out that this was mentioned this morning, the licensing board, and it was completely inappropriate for Councillor Wilson to bring it up at that particular forum. It was completely out of order in my book.
Let's see. Is there anything else, Jim?
No, it's just a comment.
No, a comment. Right, okay. Comment duly noted. Jim McLeod.
Provost,
Jim,
yes, can you hear me?
Jim, apologies for not calling you earlier. On you go, please.
That's okay, you're forgiven, Provost. I was only a joke, by the way. What I would say is I've been on the council 13 years, and all of a sudden we're getting in a stooshy about this issue about leader of the minority groups. I can understand how other councillors could feel about that, but it just seems very strange at 13 years on, all of a sudden we're getting in a hot water over all of this. Personally speaking, myself, that is, I've got no problems with having Liz being the leader of the main opposition on the council, or the largest party on the council. I don't have any problems with that at all. That's all I've got to say, Provost. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, and I'll certainly call the two of you on the next item. The next item is online remote council and committee meetings. We are recommended to consider the terms of the report and to approve for all meetings to be held on a remote online only basis until the implementation of phase 4 of the Scottish Government route map through the crisis. The protocol for remote online meetings be approved this afternoon. Thank you. Gerard, do you wish to comment?
Again, perhaps only briefly, and that is really to thank the elected members for their responses. I did have vast majority of responses back in terms of the consultation exercise here, and it's fair to share that there has been a very positive response. In whole, there's some elements I'll come on to that's not so good, but a very positive response to the online meetings and how we are going about it. I think it's certainly within the members' belief, and I think I can say fairly as an officer, well within the members' experience about how adaptable elected members and indeed officers have been in times where we're dealing with something that's quite challenging, that's quite new, and we've managed to work and to develop systems with a suitable alternative to what we all prefer. We all prefer face-to-face meetings. We all prefer to actually have the meeting event so that the elected members, officers, and on occasion members of the public can actually participate in a face-to-face meeting. But we're not going to get there in the immediate future, and for that reason we've got to consider how we're moving ahead with the online remote meetings. I think that the platform that we have and the adaptability of members and officers has shown that we have a suitable alternative. We are still getting used to new systems. There are some problems. There are some problems of connectivity, and we find ways to try to get over those by means of phone lines. We've had that experience today, and we're trying to get there. Basically, there's a system that works. Got to be reflective of the First Minister's announcement on Tuesday. In fact, the report that is before members today bears very much in relation to the restrictions that have to be confronted as from Tuesday. A public meeting, which is what this effectively is, video, but when we're back to face-to-face meetings, it's a public meeting, not a meeting of councillors or officers. It's a public meeting. It's a gathering where members of the public are entitled to attend. They might not choose to attend. We'd all like more of them too, but it's a public meeting. It's a gathering. It's not sort of essential business within the course of an office. It's a gathering, and for that reason, a public meeting can take place only when Scottish Government's route map phase 4 is implemented, when we have public gatherings. The reason I take the time to say this to you just now, Provost, is the First Minister's reflections in terms of the restrictions on Tuesday show how important it is to maintain a focus on our COVID awareness and council leadership from leaders such as you with the democratic mandate to show how these gatherings are being dealt with responsibly and remotely. I can also say, Provost, that we are gaining a lot of experience with the difficult items that are beyond such things as today's meeting. And I'm talking there about the quasi-judicial meetings. And that is testing to us by every standard, because we need to at times make sure that we're transparent. For that purpose, we want to make sure that there is in the future webcasting so that members of the public have an opportunity to see us live as we progress there, where they don't have a right to actually participate. And equally for those other tribunals, and this is very important, such as the Licensing Board or the General Purposes Board, where we are actually dealing with legal issues, people's livelihoods, that we want to make absolutely sure that we deal with that in an efficient and legal manner. And I'm extremely grateful for the way that the members have done this, in that we've had separate sittings, for example, of the General Purposes Board, because we can't maintain the normal queue to do the normal business and the normal transaction of one member or of the public in and one member of the public out and do it that way. We need to have a queuing system, all of those issues. So, Provost, I will not go on, but I will say that we have actually been commended in terms of our judicial procedures. We are different from a lot of councils in that we make a safe, secure place available. A lot of other councils don't. Some councils just expect people to log on. We've got a safe, secure system so that members of the public can participate, and so can their solicitors, and we have been commended for that. A lot of other councils are just kind of leaving it to be logged on. No disrespect to them. I'm just trying to say that this has been a focus of attention for us. Lastly, Provost, the protocol is there. I will say briefly, hopefully with all of the members' consultations they've received about that, again, thank you. It is effectively what members do. Members are exhibiting all of the good behaviours and means of engagement and courtesies, and best of all, patience, especially when things aren't going quite right with the connectivity, and actually making the meetings work very effectively. The protocol, which is there, does really kind of reflect what members are doing. I have to point out that what I've tried to do in that protocol with members' assistance is to make sure that there are certain things that are underlined. Provost, you did it at the start of this meeting. Use the chat function so that there can be a queue of comments or questions. Make sure that for those members who can't access WebEx on the phone, that the phone those members are going to at each individual item, as you do, as happens. And I've also tried to retain the discretion of the convener if there is a connectivity problem affecting one or two members. I've also tried to reflect the importance for quasi-judicials of having continuity of attendance. That's all there in the protocol. I do think it's a workable document, but it is, most of all, the members and officers document, and will only be successful if it's followed up on that basis. Thank you, Provost. I hope I haven't gone on too much.
No, thank you, Gerard. You've set the report in context, and it's quite evident which issues would exercise. I've got a number of members who wish to speak, but first of all, so that I don't omit them, I'd like to speak to those who are calling in on phone. And the phone-in callers, I'll do this in alphabetical order. Jim Clockerty. Jim, do you want to say anything?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Office. I mean, obviously I've had problems today with my Avitel connection, and I had problems at the sounding board the other day there. But other than that, it's been okay. It's been good, and I think I've been using WebEx probably since the start. So it's been good, and I've had no problems apart from today and yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Jim. Thanks very much. And Jim, apologies, I didn't call you the last time. I'll call you 4 times every time now. Okay. Jim McElhaney.
Thanks, Provost. Today, I think I had been into the WebEx and out the WebEx 3 times to try and restore my connection. Twice dialed in. The first time, or second time that I'm on the phone just now, the first time I actually get kicked out off the phone through whether the connection is there. Regarding 5.2, the paper, it says there have been no fundamental issues in respect of participation or communication identified. Then it contradicts that by saying, on occasions, there are temporary connectivity problems that have been experienced on brief occasions from time to time, but none such as adversely or materially affects the participation of members, nor impede the efficient progress of council business. I have to take issue with that. I think that's completely inaccurate, that particular statement. We talked about, Councillor Clockley mentioned the sounding board the other day. That was an absolute shambles. There was at least half a dozen people that I think were affected on that particular call. Likewise, the quasi-judicial licensing board meeting this morning, it's embarrassing where we're getting members of the public whose livelihoods are affected, and they're getting asked to log out or try logging back in, or there's no sound. It's just absolutely a farce. So with that in mind, I would like to put up an amendment to the recommendation, the fact that we should not wait till phase 4. We should go to a blended model now. At the moment, there's a number of councillors actually in the council building. There's a number of council officers and staff in the council chambers logging in to the system, partly because it convenes that they're actually in the office, partly because the system is unreliable, and the only way they feel that they're assured they're getting a good connection to actually be in office. So I think we should go to a blended model. Those who want to dial in remotely through the WebEx can do so. Others who feel more comfortable or secure in actually having a physical presence, then we should be looking at social distancing, for example, the town hall or the saloon. We've got the microphone system from the chamber that can be taken down. So that's what I would like to put forward as an amendment to this.
Okay. Now, thanks, Jim. Gerard, do you want to address the specifics Jim raised just now, or I'm going to call Jim McLeod, and it may be more useful to wait till we hear all the comments. Whatever you think.
Well, probably just briefly, perhaps to address some of Councillor McElhaney's points. I think it would be only fair that I don't think that there is an inaccuracy in paragraph 5.2. I am doing my best to sum up a whole breadth of experiences, and I really pay attention to what Councillor McElhaney is saying and the difficulties that he has had, and I know that Alan MacDonald has been spending a lot of time to try to resolve those specific difficulties. And I'm not trying to be a lawyer or smart about this, but the point I was trying to make was that we have, in every occasion, found ways around it, even if it is the phone, whether it's the phone system through WebEx or a separate phone line that we have. We've never once in the whole programme of these had such an occasion, I'm glad to say, and I hope I'm not too early in saying it, that it's been a fundamental stop to council business, and that's what I was trying to say. The second point is sort of associated, Provost, with this. I genuinely hear, and I'm sorry to my heart that Councillor McElhaney feels that about the licensing board this morning. There are very much specifics affecting the licensing board this morning, and I have to say it is a learning exercise for all involved. We have now found a way around it, and our ICT colleagues have guided us as to how we find our way around it, to mute the solicitor. And I'm going into very much detail with those members who are not present, but everyone else who's at the board will know what I'm talking about. To mute the solicitor and their client from the safe secure room. By the way, I absolutely say without fear of contradiction, we are commended for our safe secure room by that very party who thought what we do as a quasi-judicial for the licence board is excellent and well beyond anything else that's experienced, despite the trouble that members and the party had this morning. And Provost, my last remark is very important. I understand what Councillor McElhaney is saying as an amendment. There would have to, of course, be a seconder for that if that were to arise. Could I please, as an officer, say, under no circumstances should we be having meetings, and given what the First Minister has said, that there is genuine concern about having meetings with wholesale members attending meetings within this building. That's a matter for the members. It's not a matter for me. But my advice has to be that given what's been said as recently as Tuesday, my recommendations should be considered seriously by the council. If that doesn't carry the council, that's the council's decision. But officers have to make those representations because other members are affected. As I say within my report, and I say it within paragraph 5.7, a number of our members are at risk in terms of risk assessments or possible risk assessments, and we've got to be fair to them. You've also got to be fair as community leaders, as employer, to your staff. And that's why I'm saying that as an officer's recommendation, the recommendation is not a blended model, but continued online remote access for such period as you may determine. But we are servants of the council and we will do what we are told. But you do require to take or to at least consider, please, my serious advice in the light of Tuesday's announcement, please. Thank you, Provost.
Jim, do you have anything to add to your earlier observations?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Thanks, Provost. Just to add the fact it wasn't just the applicant and the solicitor, the mute problem. We were actually in private session and then we were suddenly joined by the police. It's just a farcical.
Okay. Thanks, Jim. Councillor MacLeod, Jim, do you wish to add anything?
Yes, Provost. What would I can understand what everybody's saying here. It's a very difficult world that we're moving in at this time. Safety has to be paramount in all of this. I can understand my colleague Jim's and some others' frustrations when things don't work exactly right. And I would say in particular, I mean, I don't sit in a licensing board, but something like that where you're determining people's livelihoods and the future of whether a publican, a pub or a bar or whatever can remain open or suspended or whatever, that must make it even more difficult when things break down. I can understand the urge among some people to try and get back to some kind of normality and meeting in place. One of the questions I wanted to ask is, I mean, I hear what Jerry's saying about gathering, but you have gatherings at Westminster, you have gatherings at Holyrood, and people are spaced out there, and I don't mean spaced out in certain sense, but spaced out in distance, I mean, between each other, and of course there's a blended environment where it's a number of politicians come in using the internet, and I wondered if that had been something that had been considered. The other thing is, what are all the other councils doing? I did see that, I think it's at Aberdeen or Aberdeenshire, there's been some issues there where councillors are not happy the fact that they've got to come in and be face to face. So maybe if we could find out a little bit more, if Jerry knows any more, that would be good.
Okay. Gerard, do you?
Provost, from my experience on the SOLAR, that's the Lawyers Group for Local Authorities Executive, there's such a wide spread of activities. I have to say that from my anecdotal evidence, and that's why I hesitate to do this at council, we're only really talking about formal advice, so many councils are not meeting like this at all. And I've got the direct experience that I do know that for a lot of the quasis, because that does take up a preponderant amount of my time, we are streets ahead of other places. So beyond the comparisons, we as a council do have an obligation to lead. That's why I, as an officer, have to say to you that with the broad range to my experience that's out there, with what we do, and with our system, and we're learning on our system. I mean, my goodness, I mean, how incredibly quickly we've come on from having no video conferences to treating it as a daily part of our lives. And we are learning, and there is to be a review through ICT of what the systems are over the course of the next 2 months. We have, of course, thought about alternatives in terms of other venues. For the very reasons that I spoke about earlier, it attracts members in. We shouldn't be doing that. We're trying to work through a suitable alternative remote online access. If members are not with me for the phase 4 implementation, Alan MacDonald through ICT is reviewing in the course of the next 2 months the systems. So there could be some way that I could perhaps ask members, if you're not with me to phase 4, and I believe that should be the recommendation, phase 4, because I'm clear about that, that's government guidelines, then let's think about a review after even greater experience with our WebEx experience. But I think we've got a suitable alternative, warts and all. Thank you, Provost.
Thank you very much, Jim. Does that answer your questions?
You talked to Big Jim or Wee Jim?
I am talking about my previous caller, right?
Yes, I've heard certainly what Gerard said.
Okay, thank you very much, Jim. Next up is I'm still following the sequence quite religiously, right? It's Ronnie, Councillor Arfield. Ronnie.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much, Provost. I fully endorse the points that Jerry has made. In fact, I would support quite a lot of them, and I think he basically has answered some of the questions that I had this afternoon. Personally, I have no problems in principle with the recommendations, but basically this morning we did have some serious connectivity problems, and it was really at very crucial points. And it was at the point that it was so bad that we had to have an adjournment this morning. And it couldn't have come at a worse time because it was really crucial. We just heard the police and we were waiting on the licensing solicitor response from, if you like, in inverted commas, the defendant, when the system actually broke down. And we had to have an adjournment. Now, apart from anything else, that was really embarrassing this morning. We did manage to get up and running again after 10 or 15 minutes after we had all signed off and signed on again. But we really can't, continue in that fashion. But basically my questions are further development or enhancements planned to iron out these problems going forward? Because we just can't live like that. And secondly, and I guess this is, based on what I used to do for a living, had we tested out in advance the system that we were operating this morning at the licensing board? Thanks, Provost.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. Yeah, there's obviously appears that connectivity has been one of Ronnie's issues, and particularly a critical moment, and the other is, will the technology improve?
Okay. Provost, thank you. In terms of this, I have made reference to the review that Alan MacDonald is undertaking, and provided it's not in any way unfair, when it comes to questions such as the connectivity, may I please ask Provost if you would consider asking Alan if Alan is able to advise further on that, and perhaps relative to the issues that affected the secure system this morning. That would help.
Thanks, Chair. Alan, can you respond to Ronnie? Alan. Alan, do you hear me? No. Alan?
Yes,
yes, we can hear you now.
Apologies, it's always the way with a technologist, technology.
Did you hear what Ronnie said?
I did, Provost,
right.
thank you.
Okay.
You. Yes, okay. So as I was saying, that clearly this wasn't the way that we would have liked to have rolled out a remote meeting system. So I think we are in a position where we have, by definition, a system that's the best that we have at the moment. As Mr. Malone said, we are undertaking a review across several areas at the moment. One is the network connectivity speeds to ensure that we've got the best connection between the council, the system and individual members working from home. We're also looking at whether we can do, whether the devices that we've issued to you, for instance, I know that there's been some ongoing problems using tablet devices. So we have a bit of a programme to look at whether we can replace some tablets with laptops to see if that would give you a better performance. One of the issues that we have experienced in the last week or so was particularly around the fact that there was big security updates issued by a couple of our big vendors, including Cisco and Microsoft. So when you were VPNing in, when anyone was VPNing in over the last week or so, you were in effect battling for bandwidth with security updates. So over the last week in particular, we have definitely had noticed significant issues. So we're also looking at whether we can manage that on a better basis as well. The other issue that I'm well aware of, particularly with Councillor McElhenny, is that an individual person who has an issue within a meeting can cause probably disruption that outweighs what is not in any way a small issue, but it certainly outweighs and causes considerable difficulties. So we have, again, I'm looking at different technologies that can be used within the home for elected members and officers to connect in. Councillor Quinn asks whether we can bypass the VPN, and the answer to that is yes. But at the same time, there are other technologies from our vendors that we can use as well. So I've asked that our network team look at that. In general, we have expanded rapidly with WebEx. We have on average between 60 and 70 WebEx meetings a day, with between 600 and 700 participants over the period of a few days. And we're not, as an organisation, seeing significant reporting of issues in general across WebEx. My view is that WebEx itself as a platform isn't the issue, but it could be the connectivity from within over either the VPN or other technologies are causing us issues. So I've tasked my teams to make sure we have the best quality connectivity for elected members. I'm happy to take any further questions, Provost.
Well, it was from Ronnie. Ronnie.
Yeah, thanks, Provost, and thanks very much, Alan. I appreciate that, and I'm really quite pleased that we are looking at other enhancements, developments, and so on as we go forward, because I do appreciate that technology at times can be a real pain. But can I go back to my last question, Alan? And it was basically, had we tested the system this morning prior to the licensing board meeting, had we actually recreated basically what was going to happen live at the meeting? Had we tried to look at the visitors' connectivity? Had it worked? Had we tested it? Or did we just go live immediately?
Thank you, Councillor Alford, through you, Provost. And I'll defer somewhat as well to my colleagues in legal and property services. But yes, we have had several dry runs at using that technology across several locations. I know that Mr. Moore wants to come in as well.
Thank you. That was funny. Natasha is the next to speak. Now, she indicated that she wanted to speak at 5 minutes past 5. It is now 5:32, so that is a gap of 27 minutes before her use of the chat facility and being called to. And as we're running as slowly as this, if you will permit me, only if you will permit me, I will allow the members one question, if that meets with your approval. Otherwise, we could be here for a very long time. We will be here for a long time, but we could be here for a very long time.
Obviously, I respect what you're saying. I have a couple of points to make, but I will keep it to 3 minutes maximum.
No, Natasha, you misunderstand me. I'm not talking to you. I'm saying that the time gap between you indicating that you wish to speak and then being invited to speak is almost half an hour, and
I'm running patience.
Right, okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what I'd like to say is actually I've had very minimal issues with the WebEx service. I suppose my biggest issue has been with licensing, and it's been consistent, and it's been things like having multiple calendar invites, some of which have got links, some that don't, and I get that some of these are placeholding. I think this morning's issue that Councillor McElhenny brought up around the was actually because the session hadn't been locked, and I think that's maybe just a bit of training that needs to be done, because you can lock rooms. I do it for the Labour group every Monday. From my perspective, we shouldn't be going into the workplace. I've got an underlying respiratory condition. The only time I've been in the council since lockdown began was when my VPN failed, and I wasn't particularly happy about coming in because it is a huge risk. And I know that there are many other members that have got underlying conditions that could put them at risk. And I'm not asking you to come out with what all of you have got, but I'm very aware that that would be irresponsible for us to put one another at risk. I also think it would be really irresponsible for us to actually display to the public going against government guidance, whether that be Scottish or national guidance. And I do think that we need to be making sure that we are having that transparency. I welcome the live streaming that that Jerry Malone was talking about. I welcome that because I think we should be having that transparency with members of the public. I think that's the main criticism I would have. The other thing that we need to be mindful of is the connection issues may not be the council side, it could be our own internet connections. I know that for myself, I have my camera off for many reasons, one of which is connection, but the other one is for the fact that I don't trust where my face may end up if it is streamed live or to many homes. But I do think that part of the connection issues could be actual members' own internet connection, and I'm not suggesting for once that I recommend a provider. As I've said, I had issues myself at times, but overall I've had a good experience of it, and I think it just further warrants the fact that we should have been future-proofing our infrastructure long ago. Thank you, Provost, for giving me the time to say that.
No, thanks, Natasha. Thanks, Natasha, as you said, for being so patient. Christopher. Chris. Yep.
Thank you, Provost. I just wanted to just make a couple of points. First of all, the reason I'm in the offices today was because I couldn't rely on the internet connection or whatever it is to actually do this meeting from home. Because I've had significant issues goes on. In fact, sometimes you miss meetings for about 10 minutes. As one of other fellow councillors says, luckily nobody missed you, Chris. So it obviously goes on from time to time. I think it's a little bit of what they call it. I think we're getting used to it and we're just accepting it now. But there is a significant issue with WebEx, and we really do need to get a handle on this, because it means we're now what they call in an office where we shouldn't need to be. And this is where the phase 3 and phase 4 comes in. If it's not required to be in the office, you shouldn't be in the office. But the fact is, if we can't get this system to work, we require to be coming into the municipal buildings to do our job. So this is where I'm coming from. I think if we can't get WebEx to work, and we don't get handling this very quickly, so that we all can guarantee that we get access to every meeting, we do need to get this municipal building sorted out, that we can meet face to face, because we have no other option.
Thank you very much, Christopher. Lynn, Councillor Quinn.
Yeah, thanks. I think Alan's already answered my technical question, so I think that's probably a good solution for certain people, that you don't need to bypass the VPN. So I think it's just a quick note to just my second point there about we as a council should be leading by example. All of Scotland have been told to work from home where you can, so we need to lead by example. So I think, first of all, I want to thank officers, because we've actually been digitally enabled in a very short time, which was obviously going to create problems. So actually it's been nothing short of magnificent, in fact, what we've managed to achieve and how many meetings we have every day. So I think it's just really to thank officers for all the work. Obviously, as time goes on, we will probably, by the time we get out of lockdown, we will probably mastered all the technical glitches. But I think that it's really important that we lead by example and we're not forcing people to come in. I personally appreciate the fact that I don't need to go into an office, because I am still uncomfortable having COVID and knowing the long-term effect of COVID, not to be going into a physical building where you're in close proximity. We as councillors should not be insisting that we have physical meetings where we're insisting that officers then need to be in that room as well. I think that isn't acceptable. So I think we just need to, I know it's difficult and connection problems are really frustrating, but I think that we just need to kind of bear with the officers at that time, and I'm sure we'll get it sorted out.
Right. Thank you very much, Lynn. Jerry.
When we've got Alan McDonald here, I was just going to ask, during the last General Purposes Committee meeting, when the host went to put the police out or suspend them from the meeting, they couldn't come back in again, and they had to log back in. And I was just wondering if that problem had been resolved at all.
Alan?
Thank you, Provost. Councillor Doreen, the method for placing attendees in the lobby is a fairly standard tool that appears in all of these types of video conferencing solutions. So I would like to assume that WebEx and Cisco itself have the issue resolved. I'm always happy to work with hosts of meetings to do additional training if required, and to do tests prior to any meetings as well. So that is a standing offer.
Thanks, Sheriff.
I don't think it was basically a problem with the host or anything she did. It was when she put them out into the corridor, shall we say. Basically, when we went back to them, they couldn't speak, or we couldn't hear what they were saying. And basically, they had to log off. It was the police and I think somebody from Martin McNabb's area. There was two people involved, and when they were both put out, they just couldn't come back in and participate. It was just obviously the legal services team let you know what the problem was, but I just wondered if there had been any work done on it additionally.
Thank you, Councillor. No, we haven't done anything further, but I will take it up with my colleagues in legal services to have a look at it again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jerry. Okay, Alan. Aubrey.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, I can understand members' frustrations. I, as you can imagine, on these virtual meetings with all sorts of organisations, on many times a day, and their systems also have the issues that we have, right? People get kicked out, people you can't hear. So to think that we have got something unique or that the teams are not dealing with, trust me, it is happening in every organisation. And if anybody says no to that's not the case, well, frankly, I don't believe them, because I sit and have to see this happening in other organisations. So I think it's important to get the context here that it's not just a thing that is happening in Inverclyde. So, I mean, there was a television knocking out social media down south, an old television, and it took them a long time to get to the bottom of it. Now, they got to the bottom of it, and the chap, a rather elderly chap, has no doubt been told to put it in the bin and use another type of television. So I think members have got to keep things in context, and I'm being fairly firm here that we're not recommending for a minute that we shouldn't get back together. We're following government directions, never mind guidelines, directions. And it's our job, and we have a duty of care to advise members, you must listen to what we're saying. And Jared, very politely, probably less politely than me, has made it very, very clear that we have got to behave in a certain way. And Councillor Quinn has made a fine statement thereby, we have to lead by example. So our job is to lead by example, and I'm saying to you, please lead by example. Where there are instances, and I understand Jim McElhinney, because there was a couple of meetings that I've been involved with him where I could see the wee circle. And what I would say to you is that we will look at trying to accommodate you, Jim, coming into the building, having, and the guys will work in order to make sure you have access. And any other member has got that same offer if you feel you must. This is really getting very bad, and I understand that. And I think your particular place has got a particular problem. So we'll look at that, and I'm sure Alan will do that. But I would make a plea that we respect the sort of advice that we're asking you members to take. And I'm going to ask Martin McNabb to come in after me, because we have a job here from an environmental health point of view to enforce some of these things that are going out in the public. And if we can't sort of sum ourselves up to work together to try and get a solution here, then it's going to be very, very difficult for everyone. So excuse my directness, Provost, but I think it's important to be clear about we're doing this for the best of everybody and for the best for every member. And if I could ask Martin maybe to come in.
Thanks, Aubrey. Provost, I think it's probably safe to say that members will be aware that Council is obviously looking right now at reviewing all of its activities in terms of the announcement from the government on Tuesday. And I'd have to say, what we can say for certain is that that's unlikely to lead to any more face-to-face meetings for Council staff. And I think to echo what Aubrey just said, I mean, it's only 2 weeks since we came to the Council seeking delegated powers so that we had the powers to serve directions on events and public spaces if there were likely to be breaches of the guidance or the regulations. And it would send out a very mixed message to the people that we are now currently enforcing some of that on if we were seen to be resuming in-person committee meetings. I think Councillor Murphy also made a very relevant point about the element of fairness to all members. Some of whom find it very hard to attend because of underlying health conditions. I think the final thing I'd probably say is that we probably need to be aware that if things continue in the current trajectory, then it's not likely, certainly it's unlikely in the near future that we'll be having face-to-face meetings. But there's a strong possibility that from the position we're in now of having a full round of committee meetings, we may find ourselves back in the position we were in the spring, simply because there won't be the resources to manage this, because we'll have increased incidence of COVID across the area.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Aubrey. We are living in an imperfect world and things will go wrong, but we have got to show stoicism in the face of this. Now, I have another question or an observation from Stephen McCabe.
Thanks, Provost. I'm not quite as direct as the Chief Executive. I mean, I think there clearly are frustrations, there clearly are issues, and we need to do all we can to address those issues. But I can't support the amendment from Jim. We did try the blended model in the sort of early days of the Policy and Resources Exec, and that did cause us problems. And it's something that could be, and I think it probably will be, part of the approach in the future. But the fundamental reality is that we need to be aware that this virus is out of control again. If we were having this discussion a couple of months ago, I think, yeah, would have been a sort of probably more of a marginal view on it. But the virus is out of control. We are, as Martin has said, we're looking at asking more of our staff to work from home than they currently work from home. We're going backwards in terms of this virus. We simply cannot take any chances. And to think that we seriously are going to hire the Greenock Town Hall and set up for meetings and have councillors and officers in the Greenock Town Hall for hours on end in meetings, even with physical distancing, I just think is absolutely inappropriate at this point in time. So I'm happy to move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Stephen. Elizabeth. Councillor Robertson.
Thanks, Provost. I'm wondering if we can maybe consider looking at things in a month's time and seeing how things have changed in terms of where we are then, rather than sort of definitely making the phase 4 recommendation. I'm just wondering if that's a reasonable compromise, that we don't just go for the full phase 4, because I have to take on board that there are members of my group who are having really significant issues with this. And I do take on board absolutely what we're saying about government guidelines, but it's if you can work at home, work at home. I would suggest that some of my group cannot work at home at the minute. So you know, that would certainly be my take on the actual points of the recommendation from government. So I'm wondering if, rather than buying the farm on phase 4, if we can look at this in a month's time taking on board I think valid points that my group are making. People in my group have having really significant issues, and also taking on board the general consensus from everyone else who doesn't seem to be having the acute issues that we are.
Okay. Thank you, Elizabeth. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that Provost, and I think that there is maybe grounds for compromise. I just don't think it's realistic to think the situation's going to change in a month. I think we're if anything, potentially the situation's going to be worse in a month's time. I mean, a compromise would be to review the situation again at the end of this cycle and have a further report at this point in time to the next full council meeting. But I just don't think it's realistic to see the position change in a month. And the reality is that for members who are having issues from home, and I did have some issues this afternoon when I lost my connectivity, there is the alternative of coming into the building and working for the building. Now, I know there's sometimes issues with that, but so people are not saying you can't come into the buildings. They're just simply saying we don't want elected members and officers all in the same room for a council committee meeting or a council meeting. So more than happy if everybody else is that we compromise and having a review at the end of the next cycle, which would be late November, early December.
Elizabeth, can you come in again?
Yep, thank you. Thanks for letting me in again, Provost. Just to be clear, I'm not expecting anything to happen per se to change in terms of the virus and the way that's happening. It's more about our technical capabilities and the kind of evolution of those and the development of those, rather than a change in the position with where we are in terms of the virus, just in case I had misrepresented my position there. Sorry, Councillor McCabe.
Oh, you're fine. Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm going to turn now to Gerard. There has been at least one amendment, and I've quite lost track of events. We've spent well over an hour on this, and it's been fully rehearsed and aired, and I think we should be edging our way slowly towards a conclusion. Okay, Gerard.
Thank you, Provost. If the mover of the motion for the recommendation, Councillor McCabe, and the mover of the amendment, Councillor McElhenney, would bear with me for a moment. Neither have been seconded yet, so just to bear with me. Would it be the case that perhaps an agreement could be that the terms of the report be noted, that approval be given until the conclusion of the next cycle for the next full meeting of the council, that's the November date or early December date, and that there be a further report at that stage? If that would be acceptable for both the mover and the amender, could I just make one observation, please, Provost, because I think my colleagues would wish me to bring this to all members' attention. Within the body of my report, I do make the point that we would be investing to secure the webcasting and to make sure that we have got access by the recordings of the meetings, but to make sure that the webcasting takes place for those meetings that I mentioned earlier, the planning board, local review body, where members of the public do not have an entitlement to be there. And Alan McDonald has also very helpfully commented on his review. I would just think that the members need an assurance that a review at the December cycle, let's call it that, does not cut across any of those investment plans, Provost, just to get that financial assurance, because otherwise the motion could be to continue until the end of the next cycle, and I will submit a report, of course, but just on that assurance, please, Provost.
Okay. So, are we agreed?
Yeah, Provost, Councillor Jim McElhenney here. I'm content with that.
Thanks very much, Jim. Okay, everyone?
Yeah, I'm content with that as well.
Yeah. Seems to be unanimity. It's,
I was just making the point there's no financial reasons not to. That's what I was just looking to my colleague Alan McDonald for, just in case we're cutting across any of the elements. There's not, Provost. Thank you. The motion would be then that approval is given to all meetings, etc., council committees, and there will be a review at the end of this cycle for the November-December full council meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Provost.
Thank you. We now proceed to item number 6, which is a short life working group to establish a museum of human rights in Inverclyde. The inspiration of this came from Mr. Stuart McMillan, MSP, and he has issued a request to decide whether, and we have to decide whether or not to support the proposal, and if agreed, we have to nominate a representative. The invitation was extended specifically to Stephen as council leader. Okay, Gerard.
Thank you, Provost. I really can't add to what you've said. The invitation's there. There's a request for the council to support the museum and to nominate an elected member. And Provost, with all members' forgiveness here, I should have, of course, mentioned on the prior item about online meetings, that the protocol was approved. I take it that would be approved in terms of the protocol. I was anxious just to formulate that agreed motion. But back to this item, it's the nomination of a member plus the establishing of the support in principle for the museum. Thank you, Provost.
Stephen?
Yeah, thanks, Provost. I mean, as you said, I received the invitation from Stuart to join his working group in my capacity as the council leader, so I felt it was appropriate that the council had to sort of decide if we were going to sort of support this initiative before I accepted the invitation. We obviously had a discussion at the Education and Communities Committee where we were discussing our own report, our own working group, looking at Inverclyde's historical connections with the slave trade. And I said at that time, and I stand by it, I don't see any conflict between what we are doing as a council and this initiative by Stuart. But I mean, as far as I know, at this point in time, the government hasn't actually committed to funding a new National Museum for Human Rights. The principle has been discussed and debated within Parliament, and different areas are looking to host it, but the government hasn't said they're prepared to commit the financial resources, both in capital and revenue, for it. So, but Stuart's obviously keen that if there is going to be a museum, then it be in Inverclyde, and I suppose if there is going to be, well, why not Inverclyde? So happy to hear the views of the council and whether they're prepared to support this and whether they wish me to accept the invitation to join the working group.
Thanks, Stephen. David. Councillor Wilson. You're muted.
You're sitting so long. Provost, this is a museum, and at 2.2 in today's paper it says it's First Party Group established National Museum Inverclyde to recognise and highlight Scotland's former role in the slave trade. Now, we already have agreed to have our own investigation into the slave trade and its implications and support, and I was very happy to support that. What rather concerns me about Stuart McMillan's proposal is when you read the paper about it, he goes on to say that it should include the Highland clearances and the 1820 insurrection. Now, I don't see what they've got to do with the slave trade, because in terms of 1820, as Councillor Clockerty puts very, very well, he brought it to our attention. These were weavers in Paisley who rose up again. There were strikes. There was the terrible event in Greenock where 7 protesters were shot. But at the end of the day, after various court cases, there were 19 men were shipped out as prisoners to Australia. Now that 19 getting sent to there does not compare with 20 million people being sent in chains from West Africa via Europe to America. There is no comparison between the 1820 insurrection and the slave trade. As far as the Highland clearances are concerned, the Highland clearances, they started in 1750, not long after the Battle of Culloden. It went from 1750 through to 1880, and what essentially there was a lot of unfairness and emigration, and a vast number of those who went to America and had to leave the country was due to the potato famine, which also affected Ireland. round about 1830 to 1880. That was when so many left. So again, I don't see the relationship that he's trying to put in there between the Highland clearances and the slave trade. And I think it's very much a nationalist narrative. And the author, Maggie Weir, she says that there are people who are enthusiastic for a link between the radical uprising and Scottish nationalism. There isn't a link between the radical uprising. That was a socialist uprising, which Councillor Clockerty has made us very aware of. So, frankly, Provost, I'm very happy with what we're doing. I'm very happy with our investigation into it. But I'm not happy with what the terms of reference that Stuart Eglinton is introducing into his request to us. Thank you, Provost.
David, is that an amendment? David.
But my amendment is that it should be solely looking at the slave trade. That's what the Black Lives Matter is about. It's about the slave trade that originally brought black people to the Americas.
And I don't focus exclusively on the triangular trade.
Exactly. Thank you, Prof.
Okay, not at all. Elizabeth.
Thanks, Provost. I'm sort of choosing to accept the working group's pursuing a human rights museum in the fullest sense of whatever that means. And I just think there's an opportunity for a really significant development to potentially come to Inverclyde. And I suppose we've talked about a lot of things where, you know, we want things to be shovel ready, you know, and sometimes maybe we've not quite been shovel ready on some opportunities that have come our way. So I'm again choosing to believe that the working group is trying to get us into a position where we would be shovel ready for a museum project if that decision is made. And also that we're in a position to lobby really hard on behalf of our area in a really professional and substantial way that Inverclyde should be a location for a human rights museum as much as anywhere else. And if we don't participate in that, then I think it's another opportunity that Inverclyde might be missing out on. And I'm not really content just to let that happen. I think that having the MP for the area, the constituency MSP and the council leader all working together on this, bringing direction and challenge to, well, even refining and articulating whatever our proposition might be, you know, given that it's not actually a done deal, a set thing, or necessarily something that is going to happen. Would really help our pitch for a development, any development opportunity that could come. I know that there are misgivings about the venue. I know some people have got issues with the remit, as Councillor Wilson said, but you know, wouldn't it be better to be around the table to actually influence that at the early stages before things go further than some people might like? And actually allay some of the fears that people might have. I think being not at the table, it means that there's no opportunity to have an impact on any of those things.
Okay, thanks very much, Elizabeth. I want to consult our phone-in colleagues. Jim Clockerty, are you there?
Yeah, Mark. Yes, I'm still here.
What would you like to say?
I mean, I actually, Elizabeth's point of view, you know, I think when we think on it, we've got the sugar sheds there. It would be remiss of this council not to actually be around the table. I think that'll be the key things, and it'd be interesting to hear Stephen's point of view on it. But for us as a council, not to welcome a potential, and it is only a potential, multi-million-pound development of the sugar sheds, we really couldn't do that.
Thank you, Jim. Jim McElhaney.
Thanks, Provost. Yeah, I'm content to have Stephen as our representative on the forum.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Jim. And Jim McLeod. Jim?
Yes, thanks, Provost. I mean, I have to agree with Liz. I think we should be proactive in this. I think we should have a bid ready so when the opportunity comes, that it's ready and we can get it away rather than reacting at a later date. I think Stuart's managed to bring a very good group of people together as a reference group. I think regarding David's concerns, I think the reference group can if we get around the table, can discuss these things and the way forward. I know just what was said, there's been some discussions and different opinion about the venue possibly being used, but again, that a group can certainly discuss that, and I think having Stephen as a leader of the council, representing the council and representing Inverclyde on that group, I think that would be representing the people that have elected us in Inverclyde on the council. I think that would be a good thing if Stephen represented us.
Thank you very much, Jim. Tommy?
Thank you, Provost. Provost, I would support the recommendation and support Councillor McCabe putting forward as our representative. I think, as you know, it is to establish a museum of human rights. So that's a very, very broad spectrum. So I don't think at this stage it should be our position to dictate what goes in and what doesn't go in the museum. I think that'll be down to the working group as things move on. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks a lot, Tony. Thank you. Chris Curley, Councillor Curley.
Thank you, Provost. If nobody has seconded the motion, I'm happy to do so at this precise moment in time. With respect to Councillor Wilson's comments, I think he's maybe confusing the sort of general scene setting in the letter for the actual requirements of what's been required by the short-term life working group. It's quite clear it's a museum of human rights, which will tie into the areas. I think it's fair to say that we should really be trying to look at widening this remit as best as we can, because obviously everybody would agree that slavery is the mercantile slavery and chattel slavery is a terrible terrible thing to happen, and it's great that that was stopped in the 19th century illegally anyway. Obviously we know that the slavery exists to this very day, and there's in Inverclyde at this precise moment in time there will still be people who will be in slavery. So it's important that we actually look at the human rights in the total. So I'm quite happy that we're actually looking at the in total, and of course it does affect very many parts of our history, not just slavery. I mean, I think it'd be unfair to miss out elements because it doesn't suit some elements of what they call of people's view on what happened in our history.
Thank you very much, Christopher. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Lynn to speak, and then I'm going to go to Gerard, and in the hope that he can bring all this together into a coherent motion and amendment. Okay, Lynn.
Yeah, thanks, Provost. Yeah, I wholeheartedly support it. I think anything we're bringing to Inverclyde is really a good thing. It's just one point I know. I don't know what if we have the capacity to go back to Stuart McMillan and actually ask about the representation on this board, because I would really, obviously we're talking about human rights here and the injustices of the past. I would like to actually see some BAME members on there, a bit more representation, as well as a proper gender balance as well.
Okay. Now, Gerard, can you bring us together?
Thank you.
Can you synthesise?
Provost, I will attempt. Provost, first of all, from what members have said, and I have noted, it would appear to be that Councillor McCabe is proposed unanimously as the council's representative. I'm not hearing any amendment whatsoever to the contrary in that, Provost. Could I just clarify that? Thank you. Therefore, Councillor McCabe is appointed as the representative. In terms of speaking first, Councillor Wilson made an amendment to the proposal here, which is that the museum be focused upon the slave trade, or the triangular trade as you termed, Provost. I have to ask, is there any seconder for that motion, please?
Deputy second, Provost.
Councillor Brooks has seconded. Could I therefore clarify with Councillor Wilson and Councillor Brooks that we will make this the motion for this purpose, that the motion is that the council supports the proposal relative to Scotland's former role in the slave trade, full stop. Is that satisfactory to the movers of the motion, Councillors Brooks, I beg your pardon, Councillors Wilson and Brooks? That's satisfactory, Councillor Wilson. Is it satisfactory, Councillor Brooks?
Satisfactory.
Satisfactory, thank you. That therefore is the motion. I'm going to ask for the amendment, and in the amendment, according to my notes, Councillor McVeigh was the mover of the broad spectrum human rights reference, and Councillor Curley was first to second that. I'm aware that other members were talking about the appointment beforehand, and I'm just reflecting the notes that I have relative to the museum. So the amendment would be in Councillor McVeigh's name, seconded by Councillor Curley, which is per the recommendation as it stands. Does Councillor McVeigh and does Councillor Curley agree with that, please?
Yeah, that's fine, Provost.
Thank you. And Councillor Curley?
That's correct. That's fine for me.
And as I say to all members, I have, of course, noted the previous comments about representation beforehand, a little bit out of sequence.
Gerard, could I just say that,
thank you, Provost.
that we are supportive of the museum, but it has to concentrate on the triangular trade. We're still happy with the museum. We're happy with Councillor McCabe to represent us, but they want its focus to be on the triangular trade. Can you put that into our amendment?
Councillor Wilson, and it's very important that I satisfy you on this. Therefore, it will be that the Council considers the request received from Mr McMillan MSP and supports the National Museum in Inverclyde with a focus on Scotland's former role in the slave trade, full stop.
Thank you.
Is that correct? And then the amendment is the wider human rights as is within the recommendation. Is that satisfactory to all members?
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson is satisfied. Councillor Brooks is satisfied. Therefore, there will be a vote firstly on the motion. We are going to do a roll call vote, and in that term we will actually call for motion and amendment. So I will just repeat. The motion is Councillor Wilson and Brooks for focus on slave trade. The amendment are Councillors McVeigh and Curley for the wider human rights element per recommendation. Okay? Votes on a roll call, the motion or amendment, Councillor Alfeld first. Motion Wilson, amendment McVeigh.
Amendment.
Provost, may I ask you please? Motion.
Amendment.
Councillor Brooks.
Motion.
Councillor Clockerty.
Amendment.
Councillor Crowther. I pause for a moment. Provost. Councillor Crowther.
Amendment.
Amendment noted. Councillor Crowther, thank you. Councillor Curley.
Amendment.
Councillor Dorian.
Amendment.
Councillor Jackson.
Amendment.
Councillor MacLeod.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Thank you, Councillor MacLeod.
Amendment.
Noted, Councillor, thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Amendment.
Councillor McCormick.
Amendment.
Councillor Chris McElhaney, I believe, has left. Is that correct? Councillor
Yes.
Tender apology. Blank. Councillor McElhaney J.
Amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie.
Amendment.
Councillor McVeigh.
Amendment.
Councillor Moran.
Amendment.
Councillor Murphy.
Amendment.
Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nelson, I pause for your vote.
Amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Noted. Councillor Quinn.
Amendment.
Councillor Rebecca.
Amendment.
Councillor Robertson.
Amendment.
Councillor Wilson.
Motion.
Provost, on a vote of it will be 21. It'll be 19 for the amendment and 2 for the motion. Councillor McElhaney having tendered his apologies. Councillor Chris McElhaney. I declare the amendment carried. Provost.
Thank you very much, Gerard. Thank you. 3 members actually submitted questions late. They were Councillors Quinn, McCabe and Wilson, but I think events superseded them. I think we had gone to the vote before we could go for before we could ask them for a contribution each. If I'm mistaken, I do apologise. Item 7, it's on page 21, is the Capital Strategy 2020 to 30 and Treasury Management Strategy Statement and Annual Investment Strategy 2020 to 21 to 2023-24. I have read this and I must admit that I don't feel as if I've got an absolutely secure grasp of all the details enclosed therein. But I think Alan will elucidate. Alan is going to become clear. Alan, are you there?
Thank you, Provost, and you're probably the title is longer than my talk about this. I was just going to say that this is this report clearly was prepared pre-COVID, and whilst a number of the matters have changed quite significantly in terms of things like the projected capital spend this year, the council's investments and cash flow position, I would commend to the council that it approves this as a document. It's something that's required by audit. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Gerard, have you anything to add?
Fortunately for us all, Provost, no, thank you.
No. Do we agree the recommendation? Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Item number 8 is Treasury Management Annual Report 2019-20. The remit from the Policy and Resources Committee. Again, I understand the first paragraph or so, but thereafter I'm in deep trouble. Alan, would you like to say anything to this?
Very little, Provost. This is a retrospective report that's already been to the Policy and Resources Committee, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions for Alan? No, I don't think so. Okay, are we agreed? Do we agree the recommendation? Agreed. Yes. I think we do agree the recommendation. We agree the recommendation. Right. We now turn to agenda item number 9. This is a proposed redetermination order for Campsie Road, Port Glasgow, and the idea is that it is to be used by pedestrians and cyclists only. Now, I think I'm correct in that. And please remind me, after we have dealt with this item, that I have to proceed to item number 12 afterwards. But in any case, Gerard, could you speak on this?
Thank you, Provost. This item did receive quite detailed consideration from members at the Service Committee. There are quite a number of questions raised and hopefully answered. No objections, and it's coming to the Council in order to approve the making of the order exactly as you have termed, Provost.
Does anyone wish to speak on this issue? Sorry, Jim Clougherty. Jim?
No comment.
No comment. Jim McLeany?
No comment.
No comment. Jim McLeod?
That was Jim McLeod.
No comment.
Thanks very much, Jim. Okay. Do we agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right. Okay. The next item is a slightly later item, agenda item number 12, and it is support for Aegean refugees. It's a remit from Policy and Resources. Gerard, could you set the context for us?
Thank you, Provost. A request received, Councillor McCabe, and to the Council relative to the support for Aegean refugees considered at the Policy Committee, and it was a decision, a remit from that committee, that a report be submitted to this meeting today, and that's from Louise, in respect of the principles in terms of support, the Aegean refugee scheme, and a response to be made in principle to the UK Government regarding the future support and the funding to be identified. Louise might wish to actually address some elements of this report.
Okay, thank you. Stephen, do you wish to speak on this?
Happy for Louise to come in first, Provost.
Is she?
Through yourself, Provost, we've actually got Kate Christmas, who is the Service Manager with responsibility for New Scots. So I wonder if...
Yes, that would be useful, yes. Is Kate there?
It's okay, Provost, I'm happy to come in. And maybe Kate can answer any questions that are really complicated, if it's okay. The report, it was a remit from Policy and Resources. The services went away and looked at the service that we already provide to the New Scots, and we're happy to continue along a similar lines. We would be happy to support and write to the Council. The only proviso is that we wouldn't be able to take children who are unaccompanied, and that is because of the service capacity. We don't have enough foster carers and we don't have enough individual placements that we could place children in, and so that would be the only proviso in relation to it. You'll see in the recommendations we're agreeing that we would write to the Home Office and would be pledging our support. However, it would need to be fully funded, as is with the case in relation to the other programmes that we're involved in.
Refugees, yes. Stephen, you wanted to speak?
Yeah, Provost, briefly, because we obviously did discuss it, Policy and Resources, wherein, as I said, at committee, we've got a proud track record as a council and as a community in responding to humanitarian crises like this. And we've obviously participated in other resettlement programmes, and I think they've been very successful. And the new residents that have come to Inverclyde have certainly enriched our community. So I think we should be doing what we can to address this crisis. So I would very much welcome and propose that the Council supports the recommendations in the report.
I'm going to go to our phone-in colleagues. Jim Clougherty. Jim.
Just as in the PNR committee, to support everything that Stephen said.
Jim McLeany.
Yeah, happy to support this recommendation.
Great, thank you. Jim McLeod.
Yeah, Provost, as I said at the policy...
Through yourself, Provost, an update was requested in respect of an appeal made to the Council. Can you hear me?
Provost?
We can hear you, but you're over someone else.
Provost, I don't know who was speaking there. Will I continue?
Please do, Jim.
Yeah, as I said, Policy and Resources Committee, I fully support this along with Stephen and others. I think, you know, we've seen the likes of Germany more than do their bit. They've taken in 1 million refugees. In a UK context, we've not really taken in that many, and I think more nations need to do their bit. I think in Inverclyde, west of Scotland, and the UK in the past have been very good. And we mentioned earlier on about the Irish in the 1800s, but we've also had Asians in the 1950s, Vietnamese boat people in the 70s. We've had Ugandan citizens, and more recently in Inverclyde, and have settled in very well from Syria and Afghanistan. I think we've got a really good track record, and I think we should certainly welcome this, and I would give it 100% encouragement.
Thank you, Jim. Elizabeth?
Thanks, Provost. Just adding my voice to the comments that have been made. I think it's a marker of who we are as a community, how we respond to things like this. And I think that I'm heartened to hear that we're all behind it, because I think it does speak to who we are as people collectively, and the aspirations that we've got for the world that we live in, the safety that we want people to have, and the hope that I would have that if we were in that kind of situation, that the people who are seeking refugee status are in, that we would be helped by other people. So I think it does speak to who we are as people, and we should support this.
Thanks very much, Elizabeth. I think we're now in a position. Do we agree the recommendations? That's 3.1a and 3.1b. Do we agree the recommendations?
Agree.
Agreed. Agreed. Thank you very much. Now, I think Gerard has something to say.
Thank you, Provost. In agreement with you, Provost, and in consultation with you, Provost, this is not a business item. It's just to give elected members advance notice that the annual accounts will require to be signed over a period, and the date that best suits for that is Thursday the 29th of October. And if it is possible, please, with due reference to standing orders, meetings of the Council should take place at 4 p.m. on Thursdays. May it please be agreed by members to make it 2 p.m. 2 p.m. on Thursday the 29th of October, because there is already an Environment and Regeneration Committee that is convened for 3 p.m. The meeting at 2 p.m. is expected to be brief, because it will involve members scrutinising the accounts, and there will be a physical signing for a relative small set of members and the Chief Executive, but the business would presumably be relatively brief to allow members to get back to their venues for the Environment Committee meeting. Would that be agreeable to all members? This is for purposes of advance notice, 2 p.m, Thursday 29th of October, special meeting of the Council to sign the account.
Yes, for me.
Agreed.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay. Thank you, Gerard. The next item is an exempt item, I think, and we should derive the news hounds from the hall. Is there anyone listening in on this, Gerard, you know?
I am able to confirm with some surprise, Provost, that we are in now in private session, and there are no members of the public present.